and Samaria and so on. Just the areas the Israelis don't have is the areas that the ancient kingdom used to be in. So it's a very, troubling situation for everyone involved, both the Jews and the Arabs. And then and all those who turned back were delivered up. But this is not word about that period. This is word about being steadfast. And those who held fast or were set steadfast escaped to the land of the north. Now I think escaping to the land of the north is very significant. And it has to do with what the new covenant in the land of Damascus is all about. Escaping out of Palestine, Israel, Judea, out into the northern Syrian desert. You see, it's not just Damascus, it's beyond Damascus where they're going. And where these camps in the wilderness are going. And then they start talking about that, as God said, and then they play games with Amos. I would exile the tabernacle of your king, this is from Amos, and the bases of your statues from my tent in Damascus. The books of the Torah, these are the tabernacle of the king. So now they're doing esoteric exegesis here. That is, they take the Amos passage and they say, okay, the tabernacle of the king, this is totally esoteric. Those are the books of the Torah. What's your first name again?
Melody.
Melody. Would Paul think the books of the Torah were the tabernacle of the king? No, absolutely not. Just the opposite. He's totally against the books of the Torah. So that's what I mean. There's a reversal going on in modern, in the modern period that this represents. So you have to see that this may not have anything to do with Paul, but if it did, it's an anti-Pauline group. It's an anti-Pauline group if it is in the first century and if it has anything to do with what the messianism of the first century. Then it's an anti-Pauline group. Just from hints like that doesn't prove it, but that shows that there's nothing in this group that would agree with anything he says, except they're using the same symbols. Now, I'm not advocating either. I mean, as I told you, you're free to practice your religion as you wish. Okay, and I will establish the tabernacle of David, which has fallen. It's so important. The quoting Amos 9:11. Let me put my pen in here. I showed you this last time, but I'll just show you. If you go to Acts 15, and this thing is falling apart, as you see. Paul supposedly comes up to the Jerusalem conference, as it's called in Christianity. It's not clear that this is really reliable historically, because Peter and James say some very strange things in Acts 15 at this Jerusalem conference, where Paul is going to supposedly he's supposed to be bringing, he's supposed to be challenging the position that unless you're circumcised, you cannot be saved, in line 5 of Acts 15. But regardless, first Peter is presented as speaking, and then James, and it's got to be James, the brother of Jesus. The other James is gone by this point anyway. So there's only one James, and he's the boss, and he's been the boss all the way through, and most Christians don't really realize that, and Jews, of course, don't know that at all. So, it's all new material for everybody. But look at it carefully. Listen to me. Simon has told you how God first visited, it says. First visited. Now, it says looked out at. But if you look at the Greek, it's visited. He's actually using the visitation language here. Visited the Gentiles. Okay, this is Acts' presentation of the visitation. To take out a people in his name. There's that name thing. All those parallels we're getting. I'm not saying this is an actual speech of James, but they're using the same thing. And after these things, and with this agree the words of the prophets, as it has been written. He uses scripture the same as Qumran. And what he quotes, I will build up the tabernacle of David which is fallen. We just have that quoted here. In a key part of the Damascus document, column 7. And here in a speech attributed to James, we have both the visitation language and the raising of the tabernacle of David, which is fallen. Well, that's really strong, how should we put it? Not evidence, but strong implication that there's a relationship going on here. that these people are using, and it's good for chronological strength, and it's good for ideological strength. You say, well, Professor Eisenman, if this is so obvious, how come we don't see this in the other scholars who do work on this subject? How come it's not in their books? I don't know. They don't read the documents. They're all interested in the meaning of words, putting together manuscripts, and paleography. They don't. I've never seen a single book on the Dead Sea Scrolls that has gone through the Damascus document line by line. Not one single book, and that is the most important document in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So, I mean, my answer is they're not reading the documents, and they're not telling their students, and they're not telling the general public about the documents. You say that sounds conspiratorial. No, it's just, I think, childish flock mentality. You know, follow the leader, which you people tend to do in graduate studies. You might want to call it the lemming approach. But of course, if you get out on a limb, then people are going to go after you, and so on, and that happens. But there it is. I will build the ruins of it, and I will set it up, and then so that the men that are left, same thing, will seek out the Lord, the seeking, those that are remaining, you know, and so on. And then all the Gentiles on whom my name has been called by name, playing around with the language. And saith the Lord who is doing this, and all his works are known to God from eternity. Well, we have that in the Damascus document. We've already encountered that. Therefore I judge, James as the leader, we are not to trouble those who turn to God from the Gentiles, but to write them to keep away from pollution of the idols, fornication, strangled things, and blood. Well, we're going to have keep away from fornication in the very next line of the Damascus book. And I think that we've already heard plenty about separating holy from profane, and not making proper separation in the temple, and things sacrificed to idols in the temple, and so on. So later this is put in line 29. Abstain from or keep away from, that's the Lehinazar root, NZR, the Nazarite root, to keep away from. Things sacrificed to idols, blood, strangled things, and fornication. And you will keep yourselves from these anyway, and so on and so forth. Now, I read it to you because there's no one in the class who's really familiar with it, so it doesn't matter what your background is on that.
What was Acts again?
That's Acts chapter 15, that's Acts chapter 20, line 20 to 29. And it's repeated in Acts 21 when James tells Paul to go into the temple. And you remember that I wrote these things that you were to keep away from, things sacrificed to idols and so on. But there,